Hello all and welcome to the channel. Today I am bringing you a real hidden gem of a game and it's called Müll and Money or Industrial Waste. Now, this is the German version and this game is 2 to 4 players. It's going to take you about 60 minutes. It's a super quick game, this one, and it's on that lower complexity. Now for me, I think this is a hidden gem because it plays in such a quick time but offers you so much game. There's so much depth considering the actual turn and what you're doing is so streamlined, and what it brings to the table amongst the players trying to compete and jostle to develop their organization here and be as efficient as you can. It does it amazingly well. So looking at the components then, you've got this kind of tracker of your efficiency over your staffing and your costs at the side here. So at the moment your sort of staffing is at 5 capacity, but equally the number relates to how much your costs are at the end of it too, which will make more sense. And this at the top is the value of the revenue attained when you sell your goods, because this is your factory and you are looking to attain raw materials. You're trying to sell them and complete them to get these orders, and then you'll make the revenue here. And that money will be used to do a host of things like buy more raw materials, and money's pretty much the way you're going to score up and add to your VPs at the end of the game. Now, as you complete these orders, you're going to need a certain number of employees. So for each hypothetical order you place, you currently need 5 workers denominated by that number at the top. You're going to need 5 resources here, and equally that is going to produce 5 waste, which is the name of the game, industrial waste. And you want to be uber smart over how much sort of products you're making, how much waste you're taking, because your waste is tracked at the bottom here. You got green, yellow and red, and if you end up in the yellow or red, you're at risk of some rather heavy penalties if an event card comes out. So this is a little bit about your board. You start with 15 mil. You got some loans you can take out at any point you need money, which are kind of nice, but then they are crushing when it comes to your victory points, because money is cut in half. So if you have 20 million at the end, that is going to be half is 10 victory points. But a minus 10 is going to give you 10 million sort of as a loan, but it's actually worth minus 10 points at the end if you don't manage to pay that loan back in the game. Now over to the right here, we've got the action cards, and I'll go through all these, but in terms of how a round is going to play out, the first player or one of the players is going to distribute these cards. Now in a 2-player sort of setup, you're going to bolt on an additional column. So 2 plus the 1 is 3 columns. 4-player game, it's going to be 4 plus the 1 is 5 columns. Now when you reveal from this deck these cards, you can never have the same action type in a column. It doesn't matter about the rows, but in the column you can see they're all unique. Once you set up, the first player is going to pick one of these columns. So let's just say hypothetically they go for this one. They keep these in their hand and that's their 3 actions they can do this turn. The next player goes up and they're like, right, I want to take this one. Fine, they keep that secret. Well, you kind of know what they've got, but you don't want to necessarily remember. Well, you do want to try and remember what they've got because the order of play is quite important. The other 3 cards just going to kind of discard to the side, and they'll potentially get reshuffled into those when an event is released. So you've got your cards then. You're then going to play one action, boom, you do whatever it says. Next player goes, they do an action, you do an action, and so on. Now you can decide to use all 3 of your actions, that's fine. You can also pass with your last card, and that means you can reserve this card for next round. So potentially you might have 4 actions on the next round, but you've kind of only had 2 on the previous one. So what are these actions doing then? So the first one here is raw materials. Now you kind of have to get used to the symbology. It's kind of language independent really, this game, which is nice, but you get familiar with these quite quickly. So this one is raw materials. Dependent on how many raw materials you need or where your figure is here, your token, it's at 5. So you're going to put 5 of these sort of raw materials on here, and then you start the bidding process. So the player to the left of you is going to make their bid. They're going to say anything they want, 5 million. Next player is going to bid and it's going to come back to you. And then you've got the decision to, and it only goes around once, bear in mind, to accept the highest bid, or you can beat that bid and pay it to the bank. So let's say the overall highest bid so far is 6 mil. You're like, right, am I going to pay 7 million and pay that to the bank and keep these resources for myself? Or am I going to accept that highest bid of 6 million? That other player pays you, so you've increased your cash flow, and they get the raw materials. So there's this interesting push and pull throughout the game of, well, how many resources do I want to actually sort of pretend that I may need, and how many do I want to shift? And everyone's really jostling as to what is the correct amount to give, because your opponent might say 4 mil, thinking, you know, that's quite cheap, and you're like, yep, you can have him, I will take 4 mil, because as you go throughout the game, you'll be hoping to develop your efficiencies, and a factory in this state will only need 2 resources to complete that order. But that only means there's 2 resources coming out when you decide to play this card. So other players then might not be willing to bid as much because it's only 2 resources and they need 5 resources to complete one of their orders. So I adore this mechanism. It is really clever as to how you're efficient, how the auction works, and what everyone is competing for these raw materials, because they are the base of how this game flows. You need those to get that income through the revenue. So that's the first card, raw materials. This card here, you're hoping to retain to complete an order. How are you going to do that? You literally look at your number of workers and see if it matches the level here. So we've got a capacity of 5, we've got 5 workers, we can meet that sort of labour demand. If we only had 4 sort of workers here and it was at 5, well, actually the other way around, if this was say at 3, well, on the blue, and we had 2, we haven't got enough workers for the labour in demand to produce those goods. So you kind of have to keep it an even keel or higher. So we've got enough workers, for example. Have we got enough raw materials? In this case, we need 2. Yes, we've got 2. So we're going to provide these back to the supply. We have sold our good, and the order completed is going to generate currently, if we're blues here, 14 million. We take 14 million from the supply, job done. But don't forget to add your waste. So at the bottom, it's telling us we're going to add 5 waste. So this goes all the way to 5. We're still in the green zone. We are safe. But as you go throughout the game, if you don't develop the efficiencies on your waste you're producing as a factory, this could potentially go into the yellow zone, and that is dangerous. And I'll tell you why in a moment when an event happens. So that's how you're doing orders then. The next one we have here is all about innovation. So you can pay 5 million flat rate once only to move one of these 3 tokens to the right, which is either giving you, less workers needed to complete the order, less raw materials to do the order, or less waste being produced from the order. So really nice, and that's how you're going to move these to the right. The next one is a removal of waste. So you can go back 1, 2, 3 spots, which is how you are going to stay in the green zone, which is uber powerful. This one here is growth. It means you can go 1 to the right on this track here, which is how you're going to get more revenue for your orders. And equally, once a player hits the end here, that triggers the game end. I believe you get 1 more round. So that is a game end trigger. The next one is, again, kind of influencing the costs here. So you can go down or up, and you might want to go up because you might not have enough workers and you need to kind of match whatever this number of capacity is here. So this is how you're going to go down. Now, once you've done all your actions, and I'll sort of finish the rest off, everyone is then going to have to pay the costs for running your factories, and that is this figure here. So, the further you reduce this down, the less cost you're paying from round to round. And that can be really crucial because, you get 5 down to 1, you're saving 4 over your opponents. And over the rounds, money is VPs in half, and it's just needed to grease the wheels as such, because you do not want to be taking these loans. Right. Next card we have is this sort of waste symbol, and this is quite interesting. It means you go down 1 waste, but all your opponents go up 1 waste. And if they're lurking on the upper end of the green section and they go into the yellow, well, that can be a mega powerful. We've then got this card here, which I can't recall the name, but it multiplies any of your actions by 2. So for example, if you played this one, you would go back 2, all your opponents would go forward 2. If you did this one here, you'd go down or up 2. So you can see the power of playing this card. Now, the only one it doesn't double is the order. So let's say you gain 18 mil. This is what the +5 means. You add 5 to your order. That's the only action where it doesn't double, because that'd be crazy. You get 18 mil times 2, 36 mil. That's not going to happen. It would really break the game. So this card as well, if you negate those actions, you can use this action to pay a loan off mid-game, which is powerful because, as I say, that's currently worth minus 10 victory points at the end of the game. So that is another ability there. This one here, bribery. Now, what does this one do? Well, when an event comes out, you will, at the end of that turn, play out the event, which is it's no difference between event and event. It's just a card saying you've got some negative consequences happening. Now, what that means is if you're in the green section, nothing happens. If you're in the yellow section, you will be going back one here if you can. So if I was yellows, I would be going back one. I would also have to pay £5 million, which is shocking. If you're in the red zone, which you do not want to be doing, guys, you'll be going 2 back and paying another 5 on top of that. So a combined 10 million. So you really have to manage your waste as an organisation. Now, once this has come out, you would technically reset the whole deck. So you take your deck, any discarded ones, and this, and give it a good old reshuffle there. Now, going back to this bribery card, what that can do if you manage to have that at the time this event comes out, it negates the event for you. You still pay the cost though. So if you're in the red zone, you're still paying 10 million, but you are not having to go back 2 spots, which can be really powerful because that's, you know, not only reducing your revenue, but it's kind of the game end trigger. So, and you have to pay 1 million as well with it. So that, folks, is all the actions in the card. So you're going to play your 3 actions one at a time. You're then going to pay your utilities per player, and then you're going to pass the start player on, and you keep on going until the player triggers the game end. And then you're going to add up all your points. So you're scoring points for whatever number's up here. So if you're at 20, that's 20 points. You're then going to count up all your money. You're going to half it, round it down. That's a whole load more points. And then on your board, you're probably noticing, well, what's all these numbers at the bottom? So the bottom numbers are actually victory points. So if you get your marker all the way to here, that's 15 points, 10 for this one, and 1 point there. You add all those points on, you're going to deduct any loans you've got, hopefully you haven't got any, and that's your final score, and that is it. Now, my plays have predominantly been 2 players, and it's fantastic, folks. It's a real nice push and pull, trying to figure out the auctions. It would really work well at higher play count, I believe, as well. I haven't actually had an opportunity to try at higher play counts, but I think the way the auctioning and that sort of efficiency gains and where you want to go down and how you're going to influence players with sort of bumping up their actual waste here, what columns you're going to go for of actions, because they can't always be duplicate actions there. Sometimes you're like, right, I really need that order, but then there's no raw materials, so I'm then relying on another player to play that raw materials before I do my order. But if they're astute enough, they know they're not going to do their raw materials until the end. Or maybe they do want to get out because they know they want to push every other opponent up the bid so they can get the liquidity. Because money is tight and the order of the actions is important. You might need that 5 mil because you've only got 4 mil to do one of those innovations to push, you know, one of these and make it more efficient. And you don't want to take a loan. You really, really don't want to take a loan. So you might have to play the raw materials, hoping people bid out, but then certain time frame, people don't want as many raw materials. If they've got so many here, for example, and your raw materials is on, you know, 2 needed to complete that order, well, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 orders you can do before you even have to worry about raw materials. So, you know, it's very streamlined as a game. There's nothing really complex, but what it brings as the dynamic with that auctioning of raw materials is very special. And it's a lot of fun and satisfying just making your engine efficient, and that's what it does. And it plays out, as I say, so quick that for me, I've not got many games that really offer that depth. You know, Furnace is maybe one, Happy Pigs is maybe one, but to offer a real core economic vibe, it just does a great job. And for a game that's 2001, it's nearly 25 years old, the designer of this actually is the only game he brought out. Probably should have brought more games out, but there's a different bygone era that. But absolutely loads to love here if you can find a copy. Industrial Waste, Müll and Money, whatever copy you can get, definitely worth a while having a look at. There we are, folks. Enjoy. See you all soon.